The morning sun filtered through the glass facade of Northwell Financial, one of the most prestigious private banks in the city. Clients came and went, the floor bustling with sharply dressed professionals and quiet murmurs of high-stakes transactions. At exactly 9:03 a.m., a sleek black car pulled up in front of the building. From it stepped Dr. Elise Monroe, a tall woman in a navy blue power suit. Her presence was calm but commanding, someone used to boardrooms, not lobbies. She walked into the bank confidently. After all, she wasn't just a client. She owned the building, the brand, the vaults inside, and every chair behind the counter. Northwell Financial was hers, acquired 2 years ago through a silent but powerful corporate merger. Yet, she preferred to keep her ownership discreet, operating behind layers of executive boards and front-facing directors. "Excuse me," Elise said to the manager at the front desk, Miss Karen Whitfield, who didn't bother to look up from her monitor. "Yes." The manager replied, her tone clipped. She glanced at Elise's outfit, eyes scanning with quick judgment. "I need to access one of the private accounts." "I have an appointment scheduled with Mr. Brennan," Elise said, referring to the senior investment officer. Karen sighed, clearly irritated. "Clients for private accounts don't walk in off the street. We serve by appointment only." "I have an appointment," Elise repeated patiently, pulling out her phone. "Here's the confirmation." Karen glanced at the screen but didn't read it. "I'm sorry, we can't help you today. You'll need to come back another time. Security is tight for a reason." Elise stared at her, unsure whether to laugh or question the strange treatment. "I don't think you understand who I am." Karen crossed her arms. "And I don't think you understand that no amount of designer suits gets you into our executive section without clearance. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." People in the lobby had begun to take notice. Eyes followed Elise, sensing tension in the air. But Elise didn't argue. Instead, she smiled politely, turned her phone around, and sent a single text message. Karen watched as Elise calmly stepped aside, phone still in hand. She assumed the woman had finally realized she was out of place. With a smug glance, Karen turned back to her computer. But Elise hadn't left. She was now standing by the marble column near the reception, casually watching the large elevator screen as it displayed market updates. A few seconds later, the doors of the executive elevator pinged open. Out stepped Robert Brennan, the very senior investment officer Elise had mentioned. His pace was fast, his expression alarmed, like someone who had just gotten an urgent message from the very top. "Elise," he called, voice strained. "I'm so sorry. I just got your text. I had no idea. Did someone stop you?" Elise turned to him with a light smile. "Apparently, I didn't look like someone who belonged here." Robert's jaw tightened as he looked around, until his eyes landed on Karen, who was now staring, pale and stunned. "I think we have a serious problem," Robert muttered. Then, raising his voice for everyone to hear, he addressed Karen directly. "Do you even know who you just denied entry to?" Karen looked confused. "She said she had an appointment, but, she's not just a client," Robert interrupted. "She's the CEO of Northwell Holdings. She owns this bank." Silence. Complete, heavy silence. Karen's lips parted, trying to form words, but nothing came out. She looked at Elise again, now with a mix of shock and horror. Elise simply raised an eyebrow. Karen's face flushed, and she stammered, I didn't know. "You weren't listed in you didn't bother checking," Robert snapped. By now, multiple department heads were gathering near the elevators, drawn by the commotion. Phones buzzed. The air in the lobby turned thick with tension. Then Elise spoke, calmly but clearly. "Ms. Whitfield, you've made it clear that first impressions matter here. So let's make this one count." She turned to Robert. "I'd like to have her access badge deactivated immediately." Karen's face crumbled. Karen stood frozen as Elise's words echoed through the lobby. She looked at Robert, then back at Elise, hoping, praying, it was some kind of warning or joke. But Elise was already walking past her, heading toward the executive elevator without a glance back. Robert followed, but before stepping inside, he turned to the assistant at the front desk. "Security, please escort Ms. Whitfield from the premises. Her credentials are being revoked now." "No, wait, please," Karen blurted out. "This is a misunderstanding. I didn't know who she was. Nobody told me." "You didn't ask," Elise said, glancing back briefly. "You assumed." The elevator doors slid shut, leaving Karen standing in the middle of the lobby, eyes wide, mouth trembling. Two security officers approached her quietly but firmly. "Ma'am, we're going to need your access card." Karen's hand shook as she reached for her lanyard. Other employees watched in silence, some wide-eyed, some nodding slowly, knowing this wasn't about a mistake, but a pattern. Elise may have stayed behind the scenes until now, but everyone knew she was meticulous, observant, and fair. She didn't make impulsive decisions. If this happened instantly, there was a reason. Karen was escorted out through the side door, without a scene, without drama. Just a heavy, sinking feeling following her every step. Back upstairs, Elise entered the executive conference room where a small group of partners were waiting. One of them stood as she walked in. "We just got the alert," he said quietly. "I take it you were greeted poorly?" Elise nodded once. "It's handled." She placed her bag down, straightened her blazer, and looked around the room. "Let's get back to work. We have a board meeting in 20. Downstairs, the lobby of Northwell Financial was still tense. Conversations had gone quiet, but the whispers had begun. Karen had worked there for nearly 5 years, and yet, in a matter of minutes, she had been walked out like a stranger. "Did you know she was the owner?" one teller whispered to another. "No idea." She looked. "I mean, I thought she was a high-end client, but not that high-end." She was calm the whole time. "That's what got me," someone added quietly. She didn't yell. Just sent one message. And boom, Karen was gone. Back upstairs, Elise was already reviewing the upcoming quarterly report. Her demeanor was unshaken, as though the incident hadn't happened. But those who worked closely with her knew better. Elise noticed everything, and remembered everything. One of the executive assistants approached her quietly. "Ma'am, HR has confirmed Ms. Whitfield's dismissal is complete. They also reviewed the security footage and client logs, per your earlier request." Elise didn't look up from the report. "Good. Make sure her exit package is fair. No bitterness. Just final." "Yes, ma'am." She finally glanced up. "And have internal communications send out a reminder on client protocol. No exceptions. I want tone and attitude addressed without naming names." The assistant nodded and left. This wasn't about one incident. Elise knew that. It was about the small cracks in a system that tolerated shortcuts in professionalism. People judged too fast, made decisions based on surface-level impressions, and failed to show respect, until it was forced upon them. But Elise didn't believe in forcing respect. She believed in expecting it. And she had just sent a very clear message: assumptions have consequences. By noon, the story had quietly spread to every department floor. Of course, there were no emails saying what happened. No memo that named names. But in corporate spaces like this, word traveled faster than any official channel. In the marketing department, a junior associate leaned over to his colleague. "So she was actually the CEO?" "Like, the CEO. Not just the CEO. She owns the entire holding company," the colleague whispered. "She's the reason Northwell expanded last year. She pulled it off behind the scenes. Why would she walk in through the front lobby then? Because she likes seeing how the place runs when no one's watching." This wasn't her first visit, but apparently, it was the first time someone tried to stop her. Back in the executive wing, Elise sat in her corner office, staring out over the skyline. Her expression was unreadable. To her, today wasn't about personal offense. It was about an environment she had worked hard to build, one where every individual, client or colleague, was supposed to be treated with respect and professionalism. Without exception. She picked up her phone and called the director of training. "We need to revisit frontline staff orientation," she said. "I want more emphasis on communication, situational awareness, and hospitality, real hospitality. Not the kind that's just for people in suits and status symbols." The director agreed immediately. "Oh, and one more thing," Elise added. "Rotate managers through different branches next quarter. Make sure they understand that leadership isn't about gatekeeping. It's about presence, grace, and responsibility." After she hung up, she sat quietly for a moment. She had fired one person, but she was about to change the way an entire organization operated. Later that afternoon, a private meeting was held in one of the smaller boardrooms. Only senior leadership was present, department heads, regional managers, and HR. The room was quiet as Elise entered. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "I want to be very clear," she began. "What happened this morning wasn't a rare incident. It was a reflection of something deeper." No one interrupted. "Let me ask you something." Elise looked around the table. "If I hadn't sent that message, how long would I have stood there before someone noticed? Before someone took me seriously?" Silence. "I don't need apologies," she continued. "And I don't need speeches about inclusion or oversight. What I need is change in behavior, not just when someone's wearing a title, but when they're not." She paced slowly, hands behind her back. "I'm not interested in performative professionalism. I want awareness. I want curiosity. I want people in this company to look before they judge. To listen before they respond. And to act like they work for a company that's owned by more than just stockholders, it's led by values." The head of HR cleared her throat. "We've already begun reviewing policies. Mandatory retraining, new onboarding materials." Elise held up her hand gently. "Good. But culture doesn't change through documents. It changes through example." She paused. "And starting next month, I'll be doing more visits. No warning. No heads up. No elevator straight to the top. Just me, walking in, like anyone else." The room nodded. Because they all understood now, her presence wasn't just a test. It was a standard. The next day, the front desk looked different. A new team member, Mia, had been temporarily reassigned from another branch to cover reception duties. She greeted every visitor with a calm, welcoming tone, no assumptions, no dismissive glances. Just service. Upstairs, Elise reviewed a revised training proposal drafted overnight. It emphasized empathy over efficiency, listening over labels, and professionalism rooted in attitude, not appearance. There was no mention of diversity or bias training. Elise had made it clear, this wasn't about buzzwords. This was about fixing the lens through which people saw each other. Later that afternoon, while reviewing portfolios in her office, Elise received a visitor, Mr. Cole Ramirez, the head of client services. He knocked once and stepped inside. "I just wanted to say. I've been here 9 years. I've never seen the staff this alert. Everyone's tuned in. Tuned in out of fear?" Elise asked, not looking up. "No," Cole said carefully. "Out of awareness. You changed something. And not just on paper." Elise set her pen down. "I didn't come here to shake anyone," she said. "But if people had to be shaken to open their eyes, then so be it." Cole nodded. "There's talk across branches now. About professionalism. About presence. You've started something." She leaned back in her chair. Good. Let it start. Let people rethink how they move, how they greet, how they show up for the roles they're in. That's leadership. It's not about position. It's about how you treat people before you know who they are. Before he left, Cole said quietly, "You've reminded a lot of us what this place is supposed to be." Elise didn't reply. She didn't need to. In the days that followed, a quiet but powerful ripple effect moved through Northwell's entire network. Other branch managers began re-evaluating how their frontline teams operated. Training sessions that used to be a formality were suddenly filled with real discussions, about assumptions, communication habits, and how to treat every single person like they mattered. It wasn't about walking on eggshells, it was about sharpening awareness. Professionalism wasn't just a skill anymore, it became a mindset. And word of Elisa's unexpected lobby visit? It traveled. Not as gossip, but as a story. A reminder. An internal legend. She walked in with no entourage, no fanfare, and caught the culture off guard, someone said during a leadership roundtable. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't humiliate anyone. She simply made a decision, and everything changed, another replied. Meanwhile, in the HR department, Elisa's quiet directive had taken shape. An anonymous feedback system was launched where clients could report how they were treated, from their very first interaction. The message was clear, it wasn't just about performance metrics anymore. It was about the way people felt when they walked through Northwell's doors. And now, for the first time in a long time, employees began to truly feel they were part of something bigger, something that required them to be thoughtful, not just competent. Back in her office, Elise received a short email from a junior associate at one of the smaller branches. "Ma'am, I don't know if this message will reach you, but I just wanted to thank you. After hearing what happened, our branch started doing things differently. I think we were asleep before. You woke us up." Elise smiled faintly. That's all she needed to hear. It had been just over a week since the incident in the lobby, and yet the culture at Northwell Financial had already begun to shift in visible, measurable ways. Elise sat in the executive conference room, watching a slideshow presented by her chief operating officer. Real-time data flashed across the screen, client satisfaction scores, employee retention indicators, training completion percentages. The COO clicked to the next slide, then looked at Elise. Across all branches, client experience scores jumped nearly 12% in 5 days, he said. That's unheard of. Elise remained quiet, arms folded, eyes on the screen. The head of risk chimed in. We've also received fewer internal complaints than usual. It's as if people are actually trying to solve problems before they escalate. Elise gave a small nod. Respect isn't hard to give. It just has to be expected. There was a pause in the room. Then the head of branding, usually the most cautious of the bunch, spoke up. People outside are starting to hear about it too. Not from press, just through clients, consultants, partners. I've had 3 firms this week mention your leadership, Elise. She raised an eyebrow. My leadership? They said what happened was bold. Quiet, but bold. No media stunt. No public statement. Just action. You held someone accountable, and raised the standard without ever saying a word publicly. Elise leaned back slightly in her chair, thoughtful. That wasn't the goal, she said. But I'll take the result. The COO hesitated. Do you want to address it publicly? Issue a statement? A policy update? Elise shook her head. No. The only statement I needed to make was already made. Then she stood, collecting her tablet. I don't want this company to be one that talks about values. I want it to be one that lives them. Every day. With or without someone watching. Before she left the room, she turned back. And let's make something clear, for every future hire, every future promotion, every decision we make, character will come first. That's the Northwell standard now. The room was silent, but filled with something stronger than applause: alignment. Downstairs, new hires gathered for onboarding, completely unaware of the storm that had passed the week before. They were handed welcome packets, policy manuals, and a card with Northwell's updated internal motto, freshly printed: "We don't ask who you are before we treat you with dignity." One of the new hires turned to another and whispered, "This place feels different already." Weeks passed, and Northwell Financial's renewed culture began showing its strength in unexpected ways. During a quarterly board meeting, Elise presented a comprehensive report on company performance. Numbers were up across the board: profits, client satisfaction, employee engagement, all indicators of a healthier, more vibrant organization. But it wasn't just the numbers that caught everyone's attention. "What stands out," Elise said, "is the renewed sense of respect throughout our branches. Our people aren't just meeting expectations, they're exceeding them. And they do it because they feel valued and trusted." A board member raised a hand. "Elise, was there a specific event or action that sparked this change?" Elise smiled faintly. "Sometimes, the smallest moments reveal the biggest truths. When one person is willing to hold everyone accountable to a standard of respect, it changes the entire environment." She paused, scanning the room. "This isn't about power. It's about leadership. And leadership means setting the example, even when it's uncomfortable." After the meeting, news of the cultural shift spread beyond the company. Clients praised the bank's renewed dedication to service. Local business journals featured articles about Northwell's transformation, though none mentioned Elise by name. Her philosophy was simple: change doesn't need a spotlight. It needs consistency. Back at the lobby, the new front desk team worked seamlessly, greeting every visitor with genuine attentiveness. No one was turned away without a proper conversation. No assumptions were made based on appearance or status. One afternoon, a young client approached Mia, the receptionist. "I'm here for an appointment with Mr. Brennan." Mia smiled warmly. "Let me check. You're all set. If you need anything else, just let me know." The young client nodded appreciatively. Behind the scenes, Elise received regular updates, small victories, personal stories of changed attitudes, and rising morale. And while the bank had grown stronger, it was the culture inside that truly felt like the foundation for a lasting legacy. As the sun set over the city skyline, Elise sat quietly in her office, reflecting on the past few weeks. She thought about Karen Whitfield, the manager who had denied her entry that morning, unaware of the power she was up against. Elise didn't feel anger or bitterness anymore. Instead, she felt something stronger: resolve. Resolve to keep raising the bar. To demand more, not just from others, but from herself. She understood that change was never easy. It challenged comfort zones, exposed blind spots, and tested patience. But it was necessary. Her vision for Northwell Financial was more than profits and prestige. It was about building a company where respect wasn't conditional, and leadership wasn't a title, it was an action. A legacy worth more than any balance sheet. As she looked out over the city lights, Elise made a silent promise: this was just the beginning. Because true leadership didn't end with one fired manager. It began with a commitment to transform the culture, one interaction at a time.